In any event, so we're going to talk about the history and mystery of Odd Fellowship. So Odd Fellows is an old fraternal order, one of the oldest. It goes back to the 1700s in England. There were a number of fraternal orders that were formed. Most of them were different. They were composed of the elites of society, including lordships and the like. Odd Fellows was not an elite group. It was composed of the common folks, working men and working women, and that made it different. In fact, many people believe that's how the name originated. They called them Odd Fellows because the other fraternities, like Masonic, Freemasons, focused on improvement of the self. The Odd Fellows focused on the community, trying to help others, and that was considered odd at the time. Fraternities flourished in England, and when they came over to the United States, they also flourished because at the time, in the 1700s, and then in America in the 1800s, government provided virtually no services. In England, if you had a heart attack and fell down in the street, you were there until someone hauled your body off. If you were indigent, they threw you in a mass grave. You didn't get Social Security, none of that. If you lost your job, good luck finding another job. So these fraternal orders sprang up in England and then ultimately the United States to help the brothers. And I say brothers because it was all men. All these fraternal orders were men until later in time. So we'll use the term brothers for now. The brothers helped each other. If you were out of work, the brothers chipped in and helped you find a new job. If you were sick, they would bring you food. If you died, they would bury you. They would pay for the burial. And there would be an Odd Fellow service at the burial. So they provided help to the members as well as the community. And as a result of the good deeds that Odd Fellows and other fraternities did, they developed secrets. That's what makes a lodge different from a club. Because a lodge has secrets, clubs don't. Why did they develop secrets? Because non-members tried to get the benefits. And so they developed secret passwords, secret knocks, secret signs. There used to be a whole book of them. They don't do that anymore. I'll share one of the ancient secret signs of the Odd Fellows. They had a sign of distress. If you were in trouble, you would do this. And if another Odd Fellow saw it, there was a response. They'd grab their lapel in a certain way, and they'd come and help. So they had dozens and dozens of the secret signs. They also had passwords. You couldn't get into the lodge. They had a guardian at the door, and unless you knew the password, you never got into the building, and you never got into the meeting. These were all necessities. I remember reading on the back of the encampment dues card. You know, when you're a member, you get a card. On the back of the encampment dues card were a whole bunch of codes for the telegraph, a dozen of them. They could, in those days, they used the telegraph as a means of communication. And they would, if you send the word black or the word red or whatever, it would mean something. And so one lodge would send a telegram, or telegraph, I should say, to another lodge saying, do you know John Smith? And they would write back in a code. Maybe they'd say red, which meant he's a fraud, don't let him in the door. So it was very secretive, and the secrets meant something in those days. In any event, in the history of Odd Fellowship in England, they were called friendly societies. You may still hear that term from time to time. Fraternities were considered friendly societies. Friendly in the sense that they helped each other out. There were Oddfellow cemeteries, there were Oddfellow hospitals, there were Oddfellow retirement homes, there were Oddfellow homes for widows and orphans. They ran orphanages. And that was true in the United States as well. The Odd Fellowship officially came to the United States in 1819. There was a gentleman by the name of Wildy. I may have his picture here somewhere. I think I passed around the magazine with his picture on it. In any event, he's recognized as the fellow who, oh, here it is, fellow who instigated Odd Fellowship in the United States. He came from England. He made springs for carriages. That was his profession. He was an odd fellow in England. He came to the United States about 1812 or 1815, thereabouts. And he missed his colleagues in England who were in the Oddfellows. So he thought he would form a lodge of Oddfellows in the United States. So he went to Baltimore, and he brought a bell with him, and he walked the streets ringing the bell, looking for other Oddfellows. Well, he got one or two to show up. He needed 5. He needed 5 members to have a sufficient quorum to run an official meeting. So he advertised in the local newspaper. He went in the street one more time, and he actually got 5 people, a total of 5. And so he self-initiated that lodge. Basically like Napoleon crowning himself emperor, he started the lodge. And if you dig through the archives, you'll find that there were other lodges that formed a few years earlier in New York. But be that as it may, he's considered the father of Odd Fellowship in the United States. Now, it wasn't easy to gather English men to form Oddfellows in 1819. Why is that? People hated the English. The United States had just fought a war, the War of 1812. The British burned Washington, D.C. So it was difficult, but he did it. And he traveled around the country, gathering people together, sort of like the Johnny Appleseed of Odd Fellowship. He actually started dozens of lodges. Odd Fellowship spread throughout the entire country very rapidly until there were Oddfellows lodges in every single state and also into Canada. The provinces of Canada had Oddfellow lodges. So let me talk about the structure of Odd Fellowship. There are 3 levels. The first level is the lodge level. That's where everything happens. This is a lodge. The next level is the Grand Lodge. There are Grand Lodges in every state that still have lodges, and every jurisdiction of Canada that have lodges. And then there is the Sovereign Grand Lodge, which is kind of the mothership. That's currently located in North Carolina. Now, California has a Grand Lodge. It's called the Grand Lodge of California. You might want to write down these websites to check them out sometime. It's worth it. Who has looked at the Davis Lodge website? Good for you. It's davislodge.org. The Grand Lodge website in California is caIOOF.org. caIOOF.org for California, IOF. And then the Sovereign Grand Lodge website is odd-fellows.org. It's interesting to spend a few minutes tiptoeing through those websites There's a lot of information there. There's also stuff you can order if you want it. So that's the structure of Odd Fellowship. There are some independent lodges. There is also the Odd Fellowship. Odd Fellow still exists in Britain. And then there's some lodges in Scandinavia. There's a couple of lodges in Germany. There used to be one lodge in Mexico, I think it still exists, and there's one or two in Africa. There's not a lot of lodges around the world. The bulk of the lodges are here in the United States. Odd Fellowship is very active in the Philippines for some reason. There was a young man, remember him, Leah? He came to visit our lodge. He was a real go-getter, and he's Filipino, and he went back there and he got him going. So there's now a dozen lodges in the Philippines. So the units of Odd Fellowship. There's sort of 4 units of Odd Fellowship. One is the Odd Fellows. We're all members or pledges in the Odd Fellows. There's a separate unit called the Rebecca Lodge. The Rebecca Lodge started in 1860. The Odd Fellows were the very first fraternal order to admit women. They didn't do it directly. They created a co-equal unit called the Rebecca degree, the Rebecca Lodge. Schuyler Colfax, who was Vice President of the United States, was an Odd Fellow. He was instrumental in developing the Rebecca Lodge. And women could not join Odd Fellows until about the year 2000. But they could join the Rebecca Lodge in 1860. Took a long time till women were admitted into Odd Fellows. But there are other fraternities where there's still not admitted, like the Freemasons. And other fraternities, I think the Elks may have admitted women in 2021. So it took a long time for that to happen. But so there's the Rebeccas. And then in the Odd Fellows, if you get all your degrees, there are 4 degrees in Odd Fellows. The initiatory degree is what you get when you get initiated. And then you can get your first degree of friendship, second degree of love, and third degree of truth. If you get all those degrees, you're then eligible to go to the next level, which is the encampment. There are 108 Odd Fellow lodges in California. There used to be over 500. There's 108 lodges in California. There are something like 14 encampments in California. We have one right here in Davis, the Davis encampment. And then there are 3 degrees in the encampment: degree of faith, degree of hope, and the degree of charity. If you get all those degrees, you can then go to the next level, which is the Patriarchs Militant, which is kind of the military branch of the order. If you look at fraternities, they all have a military branch. Fraternities really increased their membership after every war. After the Civil War, after World War I, after World War II, there was a boost in membership in fraternal orders. So they all have a military branch. On the Rebecca side, they have similar levels, or had. After you get your Rebecca degree, they have an equivalent to the encampment called the Ladies Encampment Auxiliary. That flourished for a number of years, and it no longer exists. There's no point in it because men and women can both join the encampment. So you don't need an auxiliary. And there was a step beyond the auxiliary, which is the equivalent to the military branch of on Odd Fellows. It was called the Ladies Auxiliary Patriarchs Militant, the LAPM. Thank you. This is why he's Noble Grand. So, And the LAPM doesn't really exist anymore because they merged the two. And the people that had rank in the LAPM, their rank got transferred over to the PM. So in this room, how many people are in the encampment here in Davis? You can see quite a few. And how many people are in the canton? That's the military branch. Canton? Just you and me, Leah. Okay. We have the largest Oddfellows Lodge in the world here in Davis, by far. Most lodges in California have about 15 to 20 members. And some of them, as Marcus knows, because he's visited most of them, some of them have as few as 9 or 10. Technically, I still don't believe it. So they have very few members, and so what do? Nothing. They have meetings, and that's about it, and maybe not even that. We have close to 400 members and about 30 pledges. By the way, pledges, raise your hand. We've got quite a few here. Glad to see you. The Rebecca Lodge here in Davis is, if I'm not mistaken, the second largest in California. The encampment that we have is one of the 2 largest, and our canton, which is our military wing, is one of the 2 largest in California. So, we're doing just fine here. And if you want to get into another unit like the encampment or the canton, you don't have to travel because we have it right here. As I say, we've got 14 encampments. There's 108 lodges, so there's a lot of other lodges around the state. If they want to join an encampment, they got to travel. They got to go somewhere. So let me tell you a little bit about the, I should mention, there used to be a youth branches as well. The Rebecca's had a Theta Rho, which was a youth branch for girls. And the Oddfellows had Junior Oddfellows, which was a youth branch for boys. There was also a combined entity. Those don't really exist anymore. No point in it. The age limit in Oddfellow dropped to 16. I see a number of people here who are 16, and so you can be 16 to join the entity. Those don't really exist anymore. No point in it. The age limit in Oddfellow dropped to 16. I see a number of people here who are 16, and so you can be 16 to join the Oddfellows or the Rebeccas. And the youth groups just didn't really make it. Let me tell you a little bit about the Davis Lodge. It is the oldest entity in Davis. It was instituted in 1870. By the way, let's talk about the N words. Lodges are instituted. That's when they're given their charter. Members are initiated. That's when they're given the secrets and get to join the lodge. Officers are installed at installations, just so you know. This lodge was instituted in 1870. If you go up to the second level, you'll see the charter of the Oddfellows on the wall. There's also the charter for the Rebecca Lodge. They were formed in 1901. And the charter for the encampment is there, and the charter for the canton is there. They're all up on the wall. So 1870, there was a lodge in town. The original lodge was on G Street. The building is still there. It actually got kind of decrepit and rat infested. And so the Oddfellows sold it to the Masons. And the Masons took over, and the Oddfellows moved around and finally were able to build a building. This building was built in 1954-55. It's not fancy, but it's sturdy. And the Oddfellows bought the land, and not only of the lodge, but the land around the lodge, where we now have our tenants. Oddfellow buildings were built in a special way. They're typically 2 stories, sometimes 3. The meetings of the lodge were on the 2nd story. The 1st story was reserved for tenants, which was smart, because otherwise you got no income to support the operation. So we built this building. We built the land on the land where our tenants reside. Our tenants currently are Hunan and the refinery, the little yogurt place at the corner, and owned by the property management company, and Treehouse Vintage. They pay us rent. We also rent to Michael and the food truck. They pay us rent for using our kitchen. So the building was built as a result of money that the lodges had. When I say lodges, talking about Oddfellows and Rebecca's. And also Frank Weber, a member of the lodge who left money, left about $300,000 to build the building. You'll see a plaque in front of the lodge. You may have never noticed it, but take a look before you leave today. There's a plaque honoring Frank Weber. And so he left the money in a will to the Rebecca's and the Oddfellows. He wanted to form a hall board association, which is an association of 2 or more lodges. There's only like 3 hall board associations in California, maybe 4. So the will was probated, and lo and behold, a second will showed up. This is all true. You can read about it in the old copies of the Enterprise. A second will showed up, leaving the money to Frank Weber's lawyer. And so this is all true. There was a will contest between those 2 wills, and it went to a judge, probably the 2nd best judge in the history of Yolo. And that very wise judge determined that the will leaving the money to the Oddfellows and Rebecca's was the true will, and the other one was a phony. The lawyer was sent to the bar and was disbarred. He was also prosecuted and served some time in the can for what he tried to do. But I digress. So they took the money. The Bank of America wanted this land too. So there was a little conflict there, but the Oddfellows won out, and they got the land, and then they built this lodge. Then in about the year 2005 till about 2012, a lot of effort was put into restoring and upgrading the building. We took a loan at the time, and everything you see is new, really. Carpets were put in, the nice asbestos covering on the ceiling. No, actually, they had to pull out a lot of asbestos. We had people in safety suits pulling out the asbestos. They put in the ceilings, the chandeliers, the wood. The total kitchen remodel was accomplished. If you look in here, you'll see this you see this kind of puke green color? The entire lodge was painted with that color. It's sort of like an army barracks. I call it puke green. And we left that up as a souvenir of the old times. So we also put in this storage space. We put in a storage space in the upper hall. The upper hall was just a big open space with chairs along the sides for meetings. 2 rows of chairs. At Leah's insistence, we saved 4 of them. They're in the committee room.
The theater seats.
The theater seating, that's right. And the upper hall was used only for meetings and nothing else. We turned it into a multi-purpose room, so it can be used for a lot of things. We put in an elevator, put in new bathrooms, upper and lower, did a lot of things to really upgrade the building and make it usable, not only for the members, but for the community. We put in the conference committee room, I should say. There was no committee room. We created the office. We built an office. What used to be up there was the Rebecca dressing room. They had a big room that was used only by the Rebeccas when they would change from their street clothes, which was long dresses, into their Rebecca clothes, which was long dresses. And in any event, the hall has become much more usable for the lodge members and the community. Okay, what else can we talk about that might be of interest to you before we open it up to questions? I have displayed some items on the table. Oh, this will be of interest before we get to the items. California is the largest jurisdiction in Odd Fellowship, by far. We have far more lodges in California than any other state. Odd Fellowship really exploded in California, a result from the gold rush. People just flocked to California, and you'll see Oddfellow lodges in every little community in Northern California in particular, particularly in the gold country. Some of the buildings are not occupied by Oddfellows anymore. The lodges disappeared. For example, the little town of Jackson had a lovely Oddfellows lodge next to the old hotel. The Oddfellows are gone, they folded up, but the lodge building is still there. So they sprang up everywhere in the gold country. The first lodge was 1849, lodge number 1. That lodge still exists in San Francisco. So they were numbered sequentially as they got instituted. Davis Lodge was number 169. If I remember correctly, 168 is the lodge in San Luis Obispo, and 170 is the lodge in, it'll come to me, another smallish town. Can't remember. But they were instituted in order. We had over 500 lodges, and now we have 108 lodges in California. So in the early days, when you look at the books of membership, and we have a book of our members in the Oddfellows that goes back to 1870, the very first people would sign that book. And we do it today. Those of you who have joined recently, you all sign that book. The members in the early days tended to be in their 20s and 30s. Nowadays, members tend to be in their 50s and 60s and beyond.
Dave?
Yes?
Lodge number 170 is Stanislaw in Knights Ferry.
Knights Ferry, yeah. That's the lodge of Fred Dolling. Fred is the Grand Master of California. Thanks for checking. Or he was the Grand Master. Because the Grand Master is who?
Dave Reed.
Dave Reed. So we now have 2 Grandmasters from the Davis Lodge.
Next is Rita, a woman.
Yeah, Rita Cooper is the incoming Grandmaster. She'll be installed in May. Rita was one of my Grand Lodge officers. When I was Grandmaster, I had 7 officers, 4 of them were women. That was unheard of in Odd Fellowship. Typically, there were no women on officers, or maybe 1. So I had a majority of women, and I think that changed the equation, because now we're getting a female Grandmaster. And there has been a female Sovereign Grandmaster. So things are changing in Odd Fellowship. So we are unique. We developed a committee structure, a strong committee structure. We have 70-some committees. And if you have a passion, something you want to do, like smoke cigars or do needlework, we form committees for that. If you have a group that wants to play backgammon, we can do that. You name it. There's a bunch of you want to do tap dancing, we can do that. All right, we have a breakfast meeting once a month. That is very unique. I don't know another lodge that has a breakfast meeting. We have it on a Saturday morning once a month. And we have our committees, we have 3 kinds of committees. One is what I call the administrative committees. The finance committee, the bylaws committee, things of that nature. Just the administration of the lodge. Then we have what I call community committees. They do things for the community, such as the zombie bike ride, or breakfast with Santa, breakfast with the bunny. We certainly encourage our members to be involved in these committees. These committees all do fun things for the community. It's also fun for the members, and typically provide money to a beneficiary. For example, our bingo committee has over the years provided over $120,000 to various community groups that are beneficiaries. That's a ton of money. There's no other organization, club, or fraternity in Davis that has done as much for the community. The third kind of committee is social committee. These are committees that do things for the members. For example, we have an Odd-Toberfest every year. We have a Halloween party every year. We, as I mentioned, we have a cigar lounge committee. We have a committee that does needlework. This is just for the members' benefit, things the members enjoy. So before I open it up to questions, there's a few things here on the table that you can check out and look at. This is, if you're in the military branch, it's the uniform branch. This is just the cap in the military branch. There's a full uniform. We have a Class A and a Class B. The Class A uniform looks just like the Army uniform. So it is considered the uniform branch. We also have these little caps with the logo of the Patriarch's Militant. The encampment wears fezzes, if you wish, not required, but we have the coveted purple fez with the gold tassel. This is a fully blinged out fez. This is the fez I wore when I was Grand Patriarch, which is the equivalent of the Grand Master. And as you can see, it's over the top ostentatious, but it is very cool. If you walk down the street, people ask you about it, or they shy away from you. Here is a collar. This is the collar of the Grand Master. They give it to you when your term is done. It's very nice. it's very expensive, and it's got the jewel. These various metals are called jewels. And there's all kinds of jewels. Here's Leah served as the Grand Guardian in the Oddfellows, one of my Grand Lodge officers. So she gets a jewel. She also served in the Patriarchs in the encampment as the Grand Color Bearer. Here's a regalia worn in the Rebecca Lodge. There are three kinds of regalia. There's chain regalia. This is chain regalia. It has a symbol on it, a lot of symbols in Odd Fellowship. And the colors of the chain also mean something. The Odd Fellows also have chain regalia. Have you seen where we store the chain regalia? You got to be more observant. It's upstairs behind two glass cases that are lit up. We have the chain regalia for the Odd Fellows, the Rebeccas, and the encampment. And if you look at them, every little jewel has a meaning. It has a symbol on it which tells you what the office is. Is it the treasurer? Is it the inside guardian, or what have you?
Hey Dave, were the cabinets for the regalia, were those there before the remodel?
No, I had them built. When I visited the Woodland Lodge before they went out of business, I saw they had their regalia in these little cubbies. So I said, we got to do that during our remodel. So I had those installed. Here is a jewel. This is the, it's a very nice jewel. It is the jewel presented for meritorious service. This is the highest jewel given by Odd Fellowship. They give out about one a year. It shows on it, it's gold, and it shows on it the heart and hand, which is one of the symbols of Odd Fellowship. So enough chatter. I'm open to your questions. Yes, sir.
So since activities, a lot of committees, a lot of folks involved, and I could see that happening with the large membership that we have here. These other lodges that you mentioned that have small memberships, are they as involved in and for the communities the way Davis is? And do they do anything to promote their or enhance their membership?
Those are very good questions, and I will tell you this. I've written 3 books about the future of Odd Fellowship. There are hundreds of books written about Odd Fellowship. Only 3 have been written about the future. You can find them in our little library. You might want to take a peek at them. They're quite interesting. I've also written over 600 articles about membership. No, that's not me. I wouldn't have that tune. I've written over 600 articles about Odd Fellowship, primarily about how to grow your lodge and increase membership. Because if you don't do it, we're just going to die out. There's about 1,000 fraternal orders, I kid you not, that have sprung up in this country and no longer exist. There was a time that Odd Fellows were the largest fraternal order in the country. We had more members than the Masons. Now they've all shrunk. The Masons since 1955, have shrunk 75% in membership. Think about that. The Odd Fellows since 1955 have shrunk 95% in membership. Think about that. There's only one lodge in California that has had a net growth of members every year for 20 years. Net growth means you've added more members than you've lost. Lodge is always gonna lose members. Members will move away, they'll pass away, they'll give up their membership for one reason or another. So there's always gonna be some members leaving. But you have to have more members coming in than leaving. If you have more members coming in than leaving, then you have a net growth. We're the only lodge that has had a sustained net growth for 20 years. There are a handful of other lodges that kind of follow our method here, which I'll tell you what our method is in a moment, that have shown growth. And the vast majority of lodges just fade away. Every year we lose one or two. Now, what's our method? Our method is pretty straightforward. We emphasize what makes Odd Fellowship unique. You know, the ritual, the friendship, love, and truth, the fun stuff, you know, the badges and jewels and things of that nature. We have meetings. We follow the formal opening of the meeting, which takes 10 minutes. And then we have a meeting, talk about stuff. But we also emphasize doing fun things for the members, like, as I told you, the Oktoberfest, the zombie bike ride, things of that nature, and fun things for the community, where we can contribute to the community. That brings in members, and that keeps members satisfied and sustained. Otherwise, you're wasting your time. Question?
Well, first, I'd just like to tell you that many of Dave's articles on this are on our website. If you scroll down to the bottom on the main page, they're all there. You can get them
Thank you.
on
I should mention, just to follow up, 15 years ago, Rick Boyles, who is a past Grandmaster, Don Smith from California, he's passed away. He was Sovereign Grandmaster, the last Sovereign Grandmaster from California, and I started what's called Dedicated Members for Change, DMC. And those articles are in the DMC newsletter, which are sent out once a week to hundreds of members of our order who want to learn how to bring members and keep members. But go ahead.
My question is, can you elaborate a little on the Grand Lodge and the Sovereign Grand Lodge? Do they have a physical location? What are their duties and how do they stack up on each other?
The Grand Lodge of California is located in San Jose. It used to be located in Saratoga. We rented. Then we got our own building, which is better than renting. We own our own building in San Jose. They have actually a wonderful museum. If you ever get a chance, there are two really excellent museums of Oddfellow stuff. One of them is in San Jose at the Grand Lodge of California. The other one is in San Francisco at the historic San Francisco Lodge. Great visit. They have the Grand Master is in charge at the Grand Lodge level. There's a board of directors, and they kind of run the ship. At the Sovereign Grand Lodge level, the Sovereign Grand Master is in charge. They also have a board of directors. They're located in North Carolina, Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And you know, we follow the rules. The Sovereign Grand Lodge keeps the code, the Sovereign Grand Lodge code, which is our basic rules. You'll from time to time hear members talk about the code, or that is, you're violating the code. They're talking about the Sovereign Grand Lodge code. And they also be referring to the California code. We're big enough that we have our own code in California.
Well, do they have supervisory
Generally,
for us, or do we owe them something, or how does?
generally they have supervisory responsibility, but we don't see them. The Sovereign Grand Master and and the Sovereign Grand Lodge has no jurisdiction over our lodge. They have jurisdiction over the Grand Lodge. And they could take away the Grand Lodge's charter. The Grand Lodge has jurisdiction over us, and the Grand Master could take away our charter. Dave Reed, who's the Grand Master, is not going to do that. So we don't see them. There are some lodges that don't ever see them. We go to a gathering once a year called Grand Lodge Sessions. About 50% of the lodges never send anyone to Grand Lodge Sessions, where we vote on legislation and other things of interest. They stay away. They want nothing to do with it. They want to be invisible. We are entitled to send up to 15 representatives, and we do that. Davis Lodge is very present. When I first started going to Grand Lodge Sessions, I was the only one from Davis. It was lonely, but I learned. Other questions or comments? Yes, sir.
The dues between Davis Lodge,
Yeah.
Grand Lodge, and
We pay dues of $60 a year. When you're members, you pay dues of $60 a year. The Davis Lodge gets no money from the dues. We don't get a penny. The dues are sent to Grand Lodge, and then they're split between Grand Lodge and Sovereign. The lodges, there are lodges that have 10 members, and so their dues are $600. Even if they kept the money, it wouldn't sustain them. So they've got to find ways to be sustained. Our dues, when we send it in, how much do we normally send in, Beth? Over 20?
20,980 is that year.
There it is. So we're the largest contributor in dues, but we don't need the dues to sustain ourselves because of the things we do, because of our tenants. We bring in about $30,000 a month, give or take, which we use to upgrade and maintain the lodge. We provide money to the Rebeccas, the Oddfellows, the Encampment, and the Canton. Larry.
I just wanted a fun fact. So, as Dave said, the Oddfellows used to support their members, and they did that through dues. In a town not far from here, in 1901, the dues were, any guesses?
50 cents?
Right now, our dues are $60.
50 cents?
$1.
$2?
I'll make it easy. They were $60.
Oh.
Wow.
And that was every 6 months.
It's amazing. I was looking back. Leah showed me the time she was Nova Brand of the Rebecca Lodge in 2008. The Rebecca dues were $15. And they're doing something that I've always said is counterproductive. They've raised the dues, so it's now $64.50. Now, that's not a lot compared to other organizations, but still going from 15 to 64, and the Rebecca membership has diminished statewide. Yes, sir. Tony.
I understand there also exists a board of trustees. Can you explain what their responsibilities are?
Well, we have a hall board association, which effectively owns the lodge and the surrounding property. It's composed of 3 trustees elected by the Rebeccas and 3 trustees elected by the Oddfellows. You can have, by the code, a hall board association when you have 2 or more lodges that own the building. We do. This building is owned by the Rebecca Lodge and the Oddfellows Lodge. So we have a hall board association. The hall board association, the 6 trustees include
Me?
Beth is a trustee. Sorry.
Yeah, my name is Beth.
Beth. Leah is a trustee. I'm a trustee. Julie, Dave Reed, and Howie Spiro. So the 6 of us meet every month. We make a lot of decisions regarding the property. The property is maintained, cared for. We replace we charge of the furniture and the tables and the lighting.
Solar panels.
The solar panels. When it rains, Greg, who is our maintenance guy, plugs the leaks. We do that stuff.
And pay the property taxes.
We pay the property taxes, we pay the insurance, we take that burden off the lodges. We pay all kinds of city and county fees, so the lodges don't have to do that. Yeah. And it's a well-run ship, I must say. Yes, Ann?
So, this is a loaded question, but if people want to join and they don't have much income, what accommodations are made for them?
Well, we're not permitted to pay someone's dues. The code says we can't pay their dues. So we have on occasion passed the hat for people that have run into problems. We also have Zoltar. Zoltar's money makes money offline, and it can be used to help members. But yeah, don't join the lodge unless you can pay the dues. But $60 a year, how much do you wind up paying, Chris, as a member of the Rotary? It's more than 60?
10 times that, I think. And one quick point, if you just come to the breakfast meetings the 10 or so times a year, I think you break even.
You really
Just
do.
FYI.
The $60 is paid for time and time again. You come to the evening meetings, there's always food laid out. You can have a glass of wine at no cost. Come to the breakfast meeting, it's free.
There's no wine at the breakfast meeting.
No.
There's food. Yeah.
No,
They don't get your hopes up.
There's a little whining from time to time.
Earlier, that the Oddfellows weren't aristocratic, so back in the early days, were they tending to be like merchants or professionals or even laborers?
It's a very good question. Yes, the answer is yes. For example, Mr. Wilding made springs for carriages. So yes, there were laborers, there were merchants, there were carpenters, factory workers, comedians, writers.
How do they afford these buildings? Where did the money come from?
Well, that's also a very good question because, nowadays, Oddfellows take things for granted. Someone built that building. Someone worked hard to raise the money to build a building. The Oddfellow lodges in the United States tended to attract, this is separate from England, tended to attract some of the best and brightest in the community. So members of the Oddfellows lodges were mayors and bankers and lawyers, veterinarians, large ranchers, they're presidents, and Charlie Chaplin was an Oddfellow. Wyatt Earp was an Oddfellow. Franklin D. Roosevelt was an Oddfellow. Ulysses S. Grant was an Oddfellow. So they had some real smart people who could put together mortgages and deals to ultimately build a lodge. And they built the lodges, They didn't just buy a building, they built the lodges. That's why I was so sad when the Woodland Lodge folded. That was a strange deal. They have, I don't know if you've seen the Woodland Lodge. It's right on Main Street. Big 3-story building on Main Street in downtown Woodland. Right at the corner. It was a very active lodge. They used to host Grand Lodge meetings there. Sessions were held in Woodland. It was a big, big lodge hall. 3 stories up, 1 story down, a basement, and they had an elevator. Lots of parking. How did they lose the building? Well, they lost members of the lodge, and so the brain power diminished. They entered into a lease with one of the tenants, which gave that tenant the right to purchase the building at the end of their lease at a set price. And that's what happened. The tenant, at the end of their lease, said, here you go, here's your $350,000, and the building is now mine. And that's what happened. So they took their $350,000, left the building, and moved into like a Quonset hut on Commerce Avenue in Woodland. I was there, I went there to check it out. They did nothing except have an occasional potluck, and they had no income. They had no tenants.
They had no leadership.
They certainly had no leadership. And so what happened? They disappeared. They gave up their charter. The building is still there, privately owned. Yes, Larry?
It's actually owned, they consolidated with the Grafton Lodge in Zamora, the Zamora Lodge.
Yeah, they're 2 members.
No, they're grown.
Who, the Grafton Lodge is?
Yeah.
Yeah, but the 2 members, when I visited the Woodland Lodge years ago, they had like 6 members. And so, you know, they may have consolidated, but it was gone.
Yeah, the Woodland people.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're in Woodland.
So any other questions before we wrap this up? Yes?